Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video, and today I'm starting off a reading vlog and I'm so excited. It's been so long since I filmed a reading vlog, probably 2 years, close on 2 years, and I don't typically film vlogs. I don't have very many on my channel, but I'm just in the mood. I'm in the mood to do a bunch of spring activities. I want to read spring books and just take you along with me. I plan on going thrifting for some books, and I'll be working on some spring puzzles, doing some baking. And I just thought, with the mood that I'm in and the beautiful season that we're in right now, truly the spring has been so beautiful here so far. And just with all of that, I thought I would film and take you along with me, and I want to keep this intro nice and short. So I'm just going to quickly mention the books that I'll be reading during the vlog, at least that I'm hoping to read, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how many I actually get done. But the first book that I already started is Dark Fire by C.J. Sansom, and I'm buddy reading this with my friend Tammy from Protagonist Pub. And it is set in Tudor England, the Tudor era. It's the second book in the Shard Lake mystery series, and it's just a mystery series set in the Tudor period with a really interesting main character who is kind of like a lawyer, and he solves the mysteries, and it's really fun. And I'm not far in, I'm only a couple chapters in, but I do plan on reading this throughout the vlog. This is the least spring-ish book, but it is set over a very hot summer, so we'll see. Maybe it'll give me those very warm vibes and everything, but I'm very excited to be reading this. I'm really hopeful that today I'll be able to start A Noble Masquerade by Christie Ann Hunter, and this is a Regency era romance. It's the first book in a series, and I've heard great things. I've heard it's really funny and just perfect for this time of year, and it is on my spring pile of possibilities as well, and I do have it out from the library, so hopefully I'll get to this one. And then the other two books are Emma M. Lyon Volume 4, which is the next one that I need to read. This will definitely get read. It's a priority. As well as Pharaoh's Daughter by Georgette Hare, and this I am going to be buddy reading with my friend Anne from In Search of Wonder. We both love Georgette Hare, and this is a shorter one by her, so this one I think I'll get done pretty quickly. But those are the books that I'm planning on reading for this vlog. Just wanted to quickly introduce the video and share the books that I'm hopeful will get read throughout the video. And of course there will be other things going on too, and I am just very excited, and I hope that it's enjoyable. I hope you find some inspiration for spring activities and all the things that just feel spring and summery and all of that. So I guess I will update you all once I have some thoughts to share on the books. I wanted to give a quick update on A Noble Masquerade by Christie Ann Hunter. I'm just finished chapter 5, I believe, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm not very far, but I'm really enjoying it. And our main character, Miranda, it's a really interesting setup for the story. It says that she's approaching spinsterhood, and so she pours her innermost feelings out, not in a diary, but in letters to her brother's old school friend, the Duke of Marshington. And so she is just this young woman who is just writing these letters kind of as a way of getting her feelings out and her thoughts and everything, rather than keeping a diary. And she doesn't send them, she just collects them. But her brother has this new valet working for him, and he ends up posting one of the letters that she writes to this duke, not realizing that she never intended it to be posted. And this Duke that she is writing to, he's kind of been a bit of an enigma. People don't really know where he is. He's kind of not really made himself known in society, and people don't know why. Her brother was very good friends with him, so her brother seems to maybe know more, but he's not really letting on, and she doesn't really care all that much about that, but that's just her outlet, is writing these letters. She doesn't care so much about the Duke, but she gets to know her brother's valet, and just a lot has already happened in just the first 5 chapters. I'm really, really interested, invested, curious about Miranda's character. Because it says here that she is approaching spinsterhood, which isn't very accurate. Apparently, because she's only about 20, and apparently the average age of marriage was closer to around 24 in the Regency era, but regardless, her younger sister is already making her debut in society and catching the eye of potential suitors and all of that. So she kind of feels like, she needs to hurry up. And it says, this breach of etiquette results in a reply from the Duke that soon leads to a lively correspondence. And very quickly, we learn who the Duke actually is. And I don't think I want to say. I think it's fun to just not know, and it doesn't tell you on the back either, but it's so fun. This book is really, really fun. I'm really enjoying it so far, and I just did not know what to expect. So I went in kind of without any expectations, just expecting to have a good time, and I'm getting that, which is really fun. Another interesting part of the plot so far is we've kind of been introduced to a potential spy, I guess some sort of mystery where there's a potential spy living in Miranda's home, and this valet, Marlowe, is kind of trying to figure out who the spy is and all of that. So I am really, really intrigued and having such a good time with it, and I'm already I already have that feeling where I don't want to go to sleep tonight. I just want to read this book, and that's a great feeling to have. So those are my thoughts on A Noble Masquerade so far. I don't know how much more I'll get read tonight, but I do have work tomorrow, unfortunately, so I can't stay up too late. And I do also want to read a little bit from a couple of the other books that I'm also reading. So I guess I will talk to you all again when I'm ready for another reading update. I wanted to share an update on A Noble Masquerade. I am almost halfway through. I'm currently on page 163, chapter 16, and I'm really enjoying this story. We had some really interesting and fun, I guess, moments happen between our main character, Miranda, and this valet, Marlowe, and basically he ends up kidnapped, and it's all part of this whole espionage thing that's going on, and Miranda is lost in the woods and she gets kind of wrapped up into it and trying to rescue him in a sense, and it's just a whole lot of fun. There's some forced proximity and they talk and it's fun. And there were a couple moments that I actually found to be a little deeper than I was expecting from a story like this, and I found it to be quite inspirational and I wanted to share. Our main character Miranda, she is in one scene here just resting after the ordeal that she was experiencing, and her friend is reading to her from Jeremiah, and she reads the verse that says, "I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans of peace, not of evil, and to prosper you," etc. And Miranda just starts to reflect, and it says, "Sleep pulled at her, offering blissful peace and quiet. Her thoughts meandered as she relaxed into the pillows. She'd be a lot happier if she knew that God's plan for her included marriage, because she wanted to seek God. If that involved giving up her dream and expectations, did she have enough faith to see it through?" And then during the Christmas season, which I also loved reading the little Christmas tidbits, Miranda further, I guess, reflects on the conversation she had with her friend Amelia. Why was it so important that she marry? Between her 3 siblings and Amelia, there was certain to be enough children around to dote on. She was more than the men she had lost, the men she had never truly had to begin with. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. And getting a little on the personal side here, but with just some of the life seasons I have found myself in, I definitely found those reflections to be things that I've thought of and thought through and had to, talk through with people that I love. And, it's not easy being in certain situations where you see your life going one way and it ends up not going the way you expected, and you end up in a very long waiting season. And it's just nice to read about characters who are also feeling that way. It's nice to kind of see those realistic struggles portrayed, even in a very lighthearted fiction Regency romance. So I really enjoyed that. And I also found it really funny that Miranda has been raised to be as ladylike as possible, and her mother deems any kind of involuntary bodily function as inappropriate and to kind of rein back on, including sneezing. So the fact that she calls sneezing an involuntary bodily function that is not ladylike, that cracked me up. But it is really fun so far, and we're getting to learn a little bit more about this mystery with the spy and everything. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but the mystery itself and the espionage, it has to do with Napoleon. And this is the Regency era, so the Napoleonic Wars were going on at this time, and that's kind of happening in the background. You don't need to know anything about the Napoleonic Wars to enjoy the story, which is really nice, but I'm just really enjoying it. It is a really fun read, and I was really excited to get home from work today so I can jump back in, and that is what I'm planning on doing. I am on my second very large coffee of the day. I just want to get as much reading done as I possibly can. I'm actually hoping to finish this book tomorrow and then start Pharaoh's Daughter, Emma Emmeline Volume 4, and then continue with Dark Fire. And I haven't really updated anything on Dark Fire just because I haven't made much progress, but once I have some thoughts to share, I will definitely keep you guys updated. So I'm currently in a city that's about an hour away from where I live, and I thought I would check out some used bookstores. I think I only have time for one or two, but we'll see what I end up checking out, and I am really hopeful that I'll be able to take some bookish goodies home with me. But there's one bookstore in particular that I'm really excited to try out and see what it's like, and it's a used bookstore, which I love. I don't have very many used bookstores in my area, which makes me very sad. So we're just gonna go check it out, see what I find, if I find anything, and I'm just excited to see what they have. And it is a beautiful, very warm day. It is about 30 degrees Celsius with the humidity, and I am just so excited to get out in the sun and enjoy this beautiful day. All right, so I just got home from book shopping, driving, etc. I will now quickly share the books that I got. That bookstore was so wonderful. I wish I could have stayed longer, but it was so hot. So hot. They had no air conditioning in the bookstore, and I also had to park quite far. So I just tried to go through as quickly as I could, but I'm really happy with my bookish finds. I got 7 books, and I'm really excited about each of them. So I will quickly share them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the books just because I will film a book haul at the end of May, just sharing all the books I got recently, as I did get other books as well that I did not get at this bookstore. So lots of books to share, but that is for another video. But just quickly going through these books, they are mostly classics and some nonfiction, and I am just really excited for each of them. The first one is Castle Richmond by Anthony Trollope, and I don't know if I've heard of anything about this one. I wrote a list of all of Anthony Trollope's works, and this has to be on it. If it's one of his main works, I definitely added it to the list of books I want to read by him because I want to read him to zero. So at some point I would have, read up on this book, but it just is one that I have not really heard anyone talk about. And I am really curious. I did not read the back. I don't know anything about it, but I really do prefer reading physical copies of classics rather than reading them off of Project Gutenberg or like Kindle. I do really appreciate the fact that Project Gutenberg is available, and if I have to, I will read from that resource. It is amazing, but if I can get a physical copy, I definitely prefer that. So even though I believe this is a print on demand type of book with quite tiny font, I still do prefer a physical copy, and I got it used. So I am very excited to read this book at some point, as I do want to read Trollope to zero, and was really happy to find this. I don't find him out in the wild very often. He is usually one that I have to get brand new or read off Project Gutenberg, so was very excited about this find. An author that inspired Jane Austen and was a contemporary of other authors like Frances Burney is Mariah Edgeworth, and I found Belinda, and it's in great shape as well for being used, and I am just really excited about this find as well. It was published in 1801, and I know nothing about it, but it's a book that I really want to read, and I have heard nothing but great things. So we shall see at some point when I read this what I think. I also ended up getting Daniel Deronda by George Eliot. I do have a copy of this book, but it is a hardback that's basically falling apart. It's an antique copy that I found at a thrift store quite a while ago, and I am just not going to read from that, or it will just fall to pieces when I do read it. So I found this edition, and I love this cover so much. I do really like the older Penguin classics that have these spines. They're one of my favorites out of all the Penguin classics that have been published. And yeah, I know nothing about Daniel Deronda either, but George Eliot is an author I want to read more from. I unfortunately did not continue Middlemarch this year, but we'll see when I end up picking that back up again. But yeah, that's another one that I really wanted a good readable copy for, and it's another one that's in really great condition considering it has been read from. Spine is broken, but otherwise in great condition. Was very, very happy to find this. And then we have a classic called Cousin Bet by Honoré de Balzac, and I have heard of this author, and I just don't know really anything about him. I don't know if this is a good place to start with his books. I don't know if this translation by Sylvia Raphael is even a good translation, but I thought I would grab it as I have never seen anything by this author at any used bookstore that I ever visit. I have heard good things about Cousin Bet, so I am really, really curious. And it looks like it was published in the mid 1800s. It's considered his last great novel. We shall see. Let me know if you have read this and what you think. This next book is a cozy historical mystery. I think it's historical, I could be wrong, but I've heard really good things about Sydney Chambers and the Shadow of Death by James Runcie. And this is the first book in a series. There is also a TV series based on the books. I've heard Kate Howe and a few other people talk about this series, and from what I remember, quite a few people that have talked about it have mentioned it's very fun, very enjoyable. I really don't know what to expect with it. I have not seen the show, and I really don't know anything about the series other than it's about a vicar who solves crimes. We'll see if it's one that I end up enjoying, but I was really happy to find a used copy as well, and yeah, we'll see what I think. I have two more books to share here. They are both nonfiction and both books that have been on my TBR for a while, and I was very, very happy to find them. First up is How to Be a Tutor by Ruth Goodman. I am so excited about this book. She wrote How to Be a Victorian, and I really, really enjoyed that one. And I don't know much about the Tudor period, but I find that the way she writes, it makes the information so accessible, and there's absolutely nothing pretentious in anything that she shares. And it's amazing because she has basically lived the lifestyles of these people. She lived like a Victorian. She would spend so much time, months, weeks, living as a Victorian, following their routines and everything. And I'm not sure if she did the same with the Tudor period, but I wouldn't be surprised if she did. And this one, the subtitle's A Dawn to Dusk Guide to Everyday Life. She's a renowned method historian, so she basically lives out the very things that she studies, and it's so, so cool. And I'm very, very excited for this book. And there are also images here throughout, and I loved the Victorian one, so I'm really excited about this one. And last but not least, as someone who is a very big fan of Downton Abbey, I was so excited to find Lady Almina and the Real Downton Abbey, The Lost Legacy of Highclere Castle. And this is by the Countess of Carnarvon. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it looks like the star of this nonfiction was the 5th Countess of this word. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but I am so, so intrigued. I've heard great things about this nonfiction. It doesn't look like it's too long. It's under 300 pages, and there are, again, one of my favorite things, lots of images throughout as well, and I am so, so excited. And they also included a little bookmark of the bookstore I visited, but this is one that I have been wanting to read for quite a while, so I am very, very excited. Also in amazing condition, considering it is not a brand new book. I'm very, very happy with this find, with honestly all 7 of these books. Great, so these are the 7 books that I found at this bookstore, and I am so happy with these finds. I am really happy that I picked this bookstore. I was gonna go to another one as well, but after leaving, I'm like, this is sufficient. I've already bought a lot of books in the last few weeks and don't need more. And then I got these 7. I think I need to really hold back for the rest of the spring, summer. I have a lot of books, but I'm very happy with these books and had such a great time at this bookstore. But I'm gonna try to get some reading in before I crash, as I had a very long day, and then I will update you all on my thoughts on what I've been reading, and I will see you all in a future bookish update. It's been several days now since I've been able to film a reading update. It's just been so hectic with life, work, everything, and I haven't had the most energy to not only film my thoughts on what I'm reading, but just reading in general. But it is currently the long weekend, and I'm hoping to get this vlog finished by the end of Monday, so Monday evening, so that sometime in the following week I can have it uploaded. But I did finish A Noble Masquerade by Christie Ann Hunter, and then have made some progress on the other books I have going, so I'll talk a bit about that. But for A Noble Masquerade, I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, kind of a 3.75 if we're being particular, but I did enjoy it. Like I was saying, I thought that the plot was really fun, and I don't know how much I shared in previous updates, but with Lady Miranda and the valet for her brother, Marlowe, it's pretty clear early on, us as the reader, we know that he is in fact this duke that is hiding his identity. He has kind of been hiding from society for a variety of reasons, and that mainly has to do with his role in the War Office in England at the time. And there's espionage, like I had mentioned before, and that whole part of the plot was really fun. I really enjoyed following that. And Miranda ends up kind of embroiled in everything, and it's a lot of fun. It's really entertaining and exactly what I needed at the time that I read the book. I had a lot of fun with it. Miranda had been writing letters to the Duke, which I also believe I mentioned, and at some point they are actually mailed out to the Duke. So the Duke, or Marlowe, the valet as she believes he is, ends up reading the letters and writing back. And so they kind of have a correspondence going on, which was also fun to read. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. There were some really nice moments, like beautiful faith elements, and moments where Miranda was reflecting on her, you know, status as a single woman, kind of watching people around her entering marriages and all of that and everything, and how she was basically reminding herself and being reminded by people around her who love her that every season, you know, has its purpose, and, you know, God has a future for her and all of that. So that was really nice to read. I'm really curious about her brother Trent. He was a really funny character that was introduced later on in the book, and I think he was first introduced at the Masquerade Ball, and the title is A Noble Masquerade. So this Masquerade Ball happens. It's quite important to the plot, and Trent is introduced, and it was so funny. I love this one passage here where Miranda's reflecting, and it says, "Was fratricide legal in England? If not, it should be. Exceptions should be made for cases like this. A girl should have some form of retribution when brothers behaved in such a high-handed manner. Glaring holes in Trent was easier than dealing with Ryland, the Duke. So she focused on making her blonde buffoon of a brother squirm like the worms he used to hide in her bed." He was a fun little addition to the cast of characters, and I did really enjoy his little quips and everything. There were certain things in the story that didn't quite work for me, and some people may think I'm just being too nitpicky, but just personally, it does bother me when things are not as historically accurate as they could be. I knew for a fact that things like waltzing, until a certain point, waltzing was not a genteel form of dance. And I was just curious, and I did some research just because there was a waltz that happens at the masquerade ball, and it was several years after the point in this book where it actually became socially acceptable to waltz and everything. That's just one little detail that probably doesn't matter to most people, but it did kind of, I don't know. I noticed it. It didn't bother me, but I noticed it. There were some moments that made me kind of roll my eyes, and it's just a personal preference thing. It's a me problem, and I guess the expectations I have from historical romance and Christian fiction and all of that. But again, I did really enjoy it. It was a solid read, and I'm thinking of continuing the series. I'm not too sure, just because the second book is about Miranda's sister, and I did not care for her at all. I'm almost tempted to just skip book 2 and go to book 3, but that might be seen as a big no-no by some, so we'll see. But I did really, really enjoy A Noble Masquerade. I thought it was quite fun. And also I forgot to mention, this was a book that I read for the Mayflowers readathon that Rebecca from Rebecca of Wilson Hill hosted. And there are flowers here at the bottom and on the top here. So that was for the readathon. With how busy things have been, I needed a book that I could just listen to on audio. It didn't require a lot of my brain power, and I ended up reading The Vanderbeekers in the Hidden Garden by Karina Yan Glaser, and I had no plans on reading this. I didn't mention it at the beginning of the vlog. It didn't even cross my mind as a possibility to read, but I just needed something easy to read, and an audiobook. I was hopeful that I could get an audiobook. And the other books that I have going right now, one of them I do have the audio for, but I'm listening while physically reading. And in general with audiobooks, I need to be physically reading alongside the book, at least for the first big chunk of the book. Otherwise, if I'm only listening to the audiobook, it has to be either a middle grade or just an easier book for me to follow, a book that I'm rereading, that sort of thing. Otherwise, I struggle to really focus, and just they require more of my brain power than I'm able to give right now in this, season that I'm in. But with this book, I flew through it. I couldn't stop listening. I also had a very long drive that I had to do, and this book was perfect. I finished it so quickly. I gave it 4.5 stars. I had such a good time with it. And even though there are no flowers on the cover of the book, and I will also say, I feel like this cover screams fall. Is it just me, or does this cover not look autumnal? This book is set in June and July. It is very summery, very gardeny, and it doesn't look that way based on the cover. And so I did not expect going into it that it would be perfect for this month, for this time of year, and for the readathon as well. There are no flowers on the cover, but I am counting it for the Mayflowers readathon just because there are mentions of gardens and flowers throughout the entire book. If you haven't heard of the series, the Vanderbeeker series, it's this family that live in Harlem, and these 5 children live with their parents. They often find themselves a little bored, get up to a variety of shenanigans, but there's always something so deep in each book. The 5 kids in this book, they basically try to set up this garden in this plot of land that's not being used for anything. And they're doing it to surprise Mr. Jeet, who we were introduced to in the first book. In this book, he ends up having a stroke. He's in the hospital, and the kids just want something, I guess, nice for him to come home to, something beautiful for him to look at and be surrounded by and that sort of thing. So they work really hard on putting this garden together, and it is so cute, so precious. And like I said, there were just so many mentions of plants, flowers, fruits, vegetables, all that sort of thing. And there were also several section breaks throughout the story. And each section break had an illustration that was just flowers and just all the flower vibes. And there were mentions of the secret garden in this book. It was just flowers and gardens. It was perfect. A fun read. I really enjoyed it. The one thing that kind of took it down a notch, and it wasn't a perfect 5-star, it's just because the kids do have to deceive their parents. Well, they don't have to, but they do deceive their parents a lot of the time to accomplish their goals. And I get that they're doing it, because they care, and it's really sweet and heartwarming, and it's really not that deep, but I just don't know how I would feel if I had kids and they were reading this book, how I would feel about some of the messages being given. But it's something very small. It is just such a precious book, such a fun series, and I definitely want to continue. I really, really enjoyed this one, and I flew through it. It's such a great book. I also made some good progress on Darkfire, and I actually have barely touched this book until this morning, and just this morning I flew through a really good chunk of it and couldn't put it down. It's really gripped me, and it's just so good. And in this one, Matthew Shardlake, our main character, he is a lawyer, and he has been asked to help with this case. This girl was accused of killing her young cousin, and he's asked to defend her. The only thing is she refuses to speak, and it's really suspicious. That whole thing, I have so many questions, that aspect of the story. Because she refuses to speak, she's basically going to be sentenced to torture until she decides to plead either guilty or innocent. She needs to plead in court, and she just refuses to speak. So Shardlake is just at a loss of what to do because she refuses to speak, but he wants to help her. The judge presiding over the case is pretty awful and doesn't care at all about this woman or Shardlake until Cromwell comes into the picture. Cromwell convinces this judge to allow Shardlake another 12 days to speak to this girl, try to figure out what's going on, give him time and her time to plead her innocence, her guilt, whatever. So Shardlake is given that time in exchange for his help with another case. And it says, the secret of Greek fire, the legendary substance with which the Byzantines destroyed the Arab navies, has been lost for centuries. An official of the Court of Augmentations has discovered the formula in the library of a dissolved London monastery. When Shardlake is sent to recover it, he finds the official and his alchemist brother brutally murdered, and the formula has disappeared. And so Shardlake is now on 2 different cases, one of which has to do with this legendary substance that can just completely incinerate anything in its path and is water resistant. And he also has this murder trial that he is trying to help this girl with, and it's really insane. It is really interesting, really captivating. It's also set during a very hot spring, summer time in London, and you feel the heat, you feel the atmosphere of the city. The way this author writes, it's like I can smell the smells and see what he's describing. He is amazing. Sadly, he's passed away, so he didn't have a chance to finish the series, but I am loving this book so much. I am reading it with my friend Tammy, and we're both very much enjoying it. And Shardlake is such a fascinating character. He has a heart of gold underneath a bit of a maybe more gruff kind of persona, but just such a good book. Oh my goodness. It's quite dark, but amazingly written. And I am really excited to keep reading. I think I'm going to fly through this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if I finished it by Monday night, but I'm loving it so much. And then I'm also reading Emma M. Lyon Volume 4. I am on page 62, so about a third-ish of the way through. And this is just a delight. I have laughed out loud multiple times already, and I just love every moment spent with Emma. And in this one, she ends up being sent by Jack, Jack is something else. Oh my goodness. I don't even know how to describe him, but Emma basically owed him a couple favors, and he gets her to dress up as this dancing girl and go to this less than reputable establishment and do him a favor. It involves passing off this diamond bracelet type thing, and the Duke of Islington is there, and he is just appalled that Emma is there. And their ride back to her house was hilarious, and just everything about this book, oh my goodness. I also adore young Nigel Hawkes. He is hilarious. And after the whole kerfuffle, Emma and the Duke end up in church together, and the sermon that Hawkes preaches is very much tied to what happened at this dancing establishment, and it was hilarious. He read from the passage where Jesus asked the Pharisees, he who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. And he basically compared the Duke to a Pharisee and then Emma to the fallen woman in a way. It was just so overdramatic and ridiculous, but very funny. And then it says, young Hawkes marched through 53 verses on everything from the hypocrisy of the whited tomb to the Old Testament assurance that the Lord looketh on the heart. And he did not stop until he had discussed each and every one in between. I sat agog, my smile widening with each remark. Islington, the Duke, was silent as the mute statues on Mars Hill. And when it was all over, the hymn sung, the meeting dismissed, I looked over at Islington, sitting stiffly, arms crossed, eyes straight ahead. At length, he took a long, slow breath, closed his eyes, and then, just as I'd prepared myself for a second verbal assault, began to laugh so loudly, everyone remaining in the chapel turned to stare. And then he apologizes, and oh my gosh, he is one of my favorite characters, hands down, in this book. He's just such a fantastic character. Every character in Emma M. Line is fantastic. I'll definitely share more thoughts once I've finished the book, but I think I will also very quickly complete this one. It is a very propulsive and fun read. And then I did read one chapter, unfortunately just one chapter. I haven't made much progress on Pharaoh's Daughter by Georgette Hare. I am buddy reading this with my friend Anne from In Search of Wonder, and I'm just the worst buddy reader ever. I've been making very, very, very slow progress on this. I had actually hoped to read this at the very beginning of May, and that just didn't happen. But from the first chapter that I read, I already am so intrigued by the characters. We have a character named Max Ravenscar, who I believe is going to be our main male lead, and he is in his 30s. He's kind of just, you know, living the bachelor dream, not really doing anything other than hanging out with his buddies. It is the Regency era, so all the things that Regency era gentlemen got up to. He doesn't believe he is of the romantic sort. He just kind of hangs out with his unmarried friends. He's very, very wealthy, and at the time, obviously, it was normal for cousins to marry, so his aunt really wants her son to marry Max's sister or half-sister. But her son, Adrian, is currently enamored with a woman who is less than genteel. She is the niece of a woman who runs a gaming establishment. This niece, her name is Deborah. She is considered like the mistress of this establishment, and she's very much not the type of woman that Max's aunt, which I'm blanking on her name, I think it's Lady Bellingham, but she is very much against that kind of a match. So she asks Max for his help in kind of pulling Adrian out of that situation. And then on the back it says, he meets the woman his young cousin is bent on marrying, the beautiful Deborah Grantham, who happens to be the mistress of her aunt's gaming establishment, and he finds that none of his experience in risk or gambling has prepared him for such a worthy or beguiling opponent. So I'm assuming he ends up developing some feelings, maybe. I'm not sure I'm a fan of Max as a character just yet. He seems very flippant and just like he doesn't really care about anything. But we'll see how his character arc progresses in this one. We'll see. But I'm only one chapter in. We still have a lot of page time for character development and things to change and that sort of thing. So we'll see with Max's character. And we still have yet to meet the infamous Deborah. But those are all the books that I wanted to share in this update, books that I've finished and I'm currently reading. And I think I'm gonna go bake something. I'm craving something else lemony. I did make strawberry lemonade bars earlier in the vlog, but I don't know, I'm craving more lemon. And I think I'm gonna make a lemon blueberry cake. So I guess I'll take you along with me and we'll make the cake and get some more reading done, and then we'll go from there.
So I have a final reading update for this vlog. I had so much fun baking and working on that puzzle, and over this weekend I have finished 2 books. I've made 0 progress on one of them, but that is okay. I'm really happy with the 2 books that I finished. And the book that I haven't made any progress on, unfortunately, is Pharaoh's Daughter by Georgette Hare. I just have not had the time, and this is going to be the book that I focus on this week, so it will get read. I just didn't have a chance to read any this weekend. But the 2 books that I finished are the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 4. I flew through this, absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. And I also, quite literally 20 minutes ago, just finished Dark Fire by C.J. Sansom, the second Shard Lake mystery book, and I buddy read this with my friend Tammy, and oh my goodness, we both loved this. It was so good, and I'm still gathering my thoughts. I'm still kind of just, you know, thinking through everything that happened in this book, because it was a roller coaster. It was wild. It was such a wild ride. But I guess I'll first talk about Emma M. Lyon. This was just an escape, and it also had a lot more depth than I was expecting. Getting towards the end, I did feel myself get a little emotional, and we kind of were delving more into Emma's grief journey, which was really poignant, and I'm really glad we're seeing more of that now. I think I already mentioned this, but I am reading this for the May Flowers readathon, as there are flowers on the cover, and I'm so glad that I read this month. I really needed a book like this to just sweep me away and take me to Storyland and just provide that perfect escape. On Goodreads, I shared an update and said basically that one thing I love so much about the Emma M. Lyon series is how you never know what the next journal entry is going to bring. Because it is epistolary, it's all Emma's journal entries, you never know what the next entry is going to
bring in terms of what adventure she's going to get up to, or if it's just going to be the most random little journal entry. Some of them are very long, pages and pages of her thoughts and the things that she gets up to, and then you'll get a random journal entry like this one here, where all it says is, not that I'm considering it with any seriousness, but how lucrative is piracy? I loved that we got to see the Reprobates 10 again, which we were introduced to in volume 3. They are so funny, and oh my goodness, there's just the shenanigans. They are amazing, and they brought such a levity to this book, and I loved every moment when they showed up. I also want to know more about Hawks, the vicar. There's just something so mysterious about him, and I want to know more. There's something about him that just raises questions, and I don't know. He's very mysterious, but such a lovable character as well. And there were just so many pages that I jotted down just full of humor and moments that made me laugh out loud, and it's just perfection. One scene that had me almost crying of laughter, and it's also probably because I was very tired while reading it, and everything is funnier when you're tired. But basically, there's a character named Charles Goddard who is Emma's unintended intended. So he is the man that her aunt wants her to marry, but he's very awkward. Emma is not about that. But basically this passage here just had me dying. Mr. Goddard, I finally managed, feeling a dangerous sense of claustrophobia setting in. I do not intend to marry you. You understand this, yes? I do. Your aunt has said we must wait. The scene which I have described cannot take place for another year, maybe 2. So we must think on the future quietly in our hearts. Thinking of our children requires an entire afternoon. A boy, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy, then a girl, then a girl, then a boy. He took another long breath, and so did I. It was an extraordinary amount of childbirthing he was wishing upon my person, and the thought of 9 tall, gangly, ruddy-cheeked children with sails for ears and hauntingly perfect teeth cloying about my person was such an image of terror that when he had filled his lungs again, closed his eyes, and added, "And then a boy," I'm afraid I was beyond reasonable action. I brought my shoe down hard on his. And then she's speaking to her friend Roland, and he says, "You're really going to deny me the details of your wedding breakfast?" he asked after we retrieved the arrows from the target. "Roland, I am. Do you wish to know why? Because I cannot remember it after having given birth to a boy, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy, then a girl, then a boy, then a girl, then a girl, then a boy, then another boy." He wants you to have 10 children? It's written in the stars, apparently. You'll be exhausted. It didn't say they were my stars, Roland. He then thwacked me with an arrow and I gave chase. I love that. I love the silliness. And there's also a quote here, or a very short passage. And as much as I love spring, and I have just been embracing the spring season so much, and I love it, I am truly an autumn girl at heart. Autumn will always be my favorite season. And Emma was just reflecting here saying, "Father always liked fall best. Mother claimed it was his natural melancholy. I don't agree. One doesn't have to prefer spring to be a contented soul." And I agree with that. The most random things also happen to Emma, and she's just like, of course it's me. And this other passage here, she says, "There is nothing like realizing one has developed a habit of drinking in front of their vicar," which is so true because she always happens to be consuming or imbibing in alcohol when Hawks is around. And it's so funny. I also love how much Hawks loves poetry, and there were beautiful passages from Christina Rossetti and Tennyson. And there's just so much to love about this book, about this series, and in such a short book, so many things that made me just feel so deeply and laugh out loud. And this book is perfection. 5 stars. Loved it so much. And like I said, I just finished Darkfire. Such a wild read and a propulsive plot that I couldn't put it down. I flew through this, and I didn't really give any reading updates past the, I think like page 180 mark. So I read about this much, gave a reading update, and then I just flew through the rest of the book this weekend. I couldn't stop reading. It was so good. Oh my goodness, I loved it. In the first update, I believe I mentioned the murder trial that Shardlake is involved in with this young girl, Elizabeth, who was accused of killing her cousin. And he was given more time, basically given a favor by Thomas Cromwell's influence in exchange for his help with Cromwell's case that he's working on. He's trying to figure out how to get this secret formula for this dark fire substance that he believes would be very beneficial for England, for the king, for Henry VIII. It's very political. There's a lot of politics, which a lot of the times that does kind of fly over my head. But the setup was just really easy to follow. Everything about this book was so easy to follow. For someone like me who is very intimidated by the Tudor period and anything prior to the Victorian era, I get very intimidated, but it's very, very approachable in this series. And so Shardlake is working on this case, and the men that he believes to have the secret formula, he finds murdered. And so we have more layers to this mystery, and he has these two separate mysteries that he's working on, this murder trial and then this dark fire substance. And he feels the pressure from Cromwell, but there's also some instability with Cromwell's position. And this is set in 1540, which is also the year that Cromwell falls out of favor with Henry VIII. And I only knew that because of the historical note at the back. I know next to nothing about Henry VIII or anything to do with his, his political machinations and everything. The historical note was very helpful. But truly such a propulsive story. I was just blown away. Cromwell actually sends one of his men to help Shardlake, and his name is Berwick. And he was so funny. He was one of my favorite characters. A bit of a rough around the edges kind of guy, and definitely liked to swear, but such a funny character. And he brought some comic relief to an otherwise dark story. In the first book, as well as this book, there were definitely some really important themes brought up, and they mainly have to do with religion. This is definitely a hot topic of the day, especially with the Reformation, and we have a lot of, Catholic versus Protestant versus all the other, I guess, denominations, and just a lot of tension between everyone. And there were just some really interesting discussions had. There are a couple quotes that I liked that have to do with this topic. And in this one passage, Shardlake is speaking to his friend Guy, who was a monk before the fall or the dissolution of the monasteries. And he says this to Guy: "Why does faith bring out the worst in so many? How is it that it can turn men, papist and reformer both, into brutes?" And then Guy responds, "Man is an angry, savage being. Sometimes faith becomes an excuse for battle. It is no real faith then. In justifying their positions in the name of God, men silence God." And then another passage where Shardlake is speaking to another character: "How easy it is to make victims of people. How humanity is addicted to that sin. Reformers have made victims of papists, and now the reformers are being victimized in their turn. Will it never end?" There are definitely things in this book that make it a very heavy read. It's not an easy read at all. There are many trigger warnings, and if you're sensitive to a lot of different things, I would definitely maybe stay away from this series. In this book in particular, it was quite difficult to read, as there is cruelty to animals, to children, and children themselves being cruel, and also discussions around prostitution and that sort of thing. And none of it was done in a way where it was insensitive. In my opinion, this author writes with grace around these topics and fairness, and he's also brutally honest, which I do respect, but in a graceful way, if that makes sense. And I also really, really enjoyed reading this book around this time of year because it's set in May and June, but it is a very hot late spring, early summer in London. And that heat and that sense of stifling suffocation almost kind of makes you as the reader feel that kind of atmosphere. And it's just the perfect pairing to the storyline and what's going on in the story. It was just so good. I loved it. I'm giving it 5 stars. I had such a great time. Flew through it. It was quite long, but very, very quick to read. So that is the final little reading update that I wanted to share, and that is it for this spring May reading vlog. And hopefully I'll be able to share some more reading vlogs over the next few months. I had a lot of fun filming this one. I had a lot of fun with the different activities. I loved the baking and the puzzling and everything. I love doing things seasonally, and obviously I bake year round. I work on puzzles year round, but to make recipes that feel very springtime-esque and to work on puzzles that fit the season, it's always nice. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found some inspiration, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.